imagination to comprehend the idea of status, okay? Now, your reality is fundamentally constrained to two things. A, your immediate sensory experience, and B, your imagination. So your ability to comprehend this thing called reality is, really just limited to these two things, but you're also constrained by them. Because in order for you to know what exists and what is true and what is real, you have to be able to perceive it. And what that means is that you are constrained to these two things, which is your immediate sensory experience and your imagination. And so this is kind of unique because let's say that you grow up in the jungle. Let's just say you grow up in the Congo jungle in Africa. And you grow up with your parents, but you have no contact with the outside world whatsoever. You have no concept of money or society or civilization. You just live in a really small tribe and you've never seen another human, you've never seen a plane, you've never seen anything at all. Well, your reality is constrained to these things because, you're not going to get rich because you don't even know what money is. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like you can't go beyond your sensory experiences and your imagination. And to a massive degree as well, your imagination is fundamentally constrained to your immediate sensory experience because how on earth could someone in the jungle imagine money and making money when they've never perceived money with their sensory experiences? So it's kind of like there are things that are built in, like for example, religion. There are things that are coded into people. And I'm not saying that religion is this thing that's coded into you, but my point is that, people in the jungle, they might believe in a god. And that might be because we have a theological bias and you can use your imagination to comprehend that even if you have no immediate sensory experience of the church or the mosque or the synagogue or whatever, right? But you're constrained by these things. And, if you've grown up and all your life you've gone without experiencing something, then you don't know it exists. Like, here's the thing about reality. If you haven't perceived it or observed it, it doesn't exist to you. So, like, for example, yesterday, I discovered that there's a country called Andorra, which is a tiny country in between Spain and France. I didn't even know that existed. So to me, I've been basically my subjective reality for the last 26, 27 years has been one that Andorra doesn't exist. And if someone asked me, like, is there a country between the border of France and Spain? I'd be like, no. I'd be like, are you an idiot? Like, of course there's not. But that's because, like, the information that Andorra exists has never entered my immediate sensory experience. I've never seen it on a map. No one's ever talked about it. I've never seen a video on it. No information's come into my awareness. And therefore, to me, it's not real. It doesn't exist. It's no different from the person in the jungle not being able to comprehend the idea of money or banks because they've never perceived them, right? So you're really constrained by this. Like, fundamentally, you're constrained. And I want you to imagine that we humans are like gigantic projectors. This is how we observe reality, okay? So this is all, a bit out there, this objective reality thing, but like, how do we actually observe or perceive this stuff? Because, trees exist, dogs exist, Rubik's Cubes exist, time exists, democracy exists, gravity exists, but how do we know? Like, how the hell do we observe these things? Well, here's how it works. 1, we receive sensory inputs or we imagine them, okay? So it starts by you receiving information from your environment, or it starts by you imagining something, okay? And we process these inputs, either imaginary or sensory, by creating electrical impulses in our brains. And as we do this, we instantaneously project what we observe in our mind as an experience, okay? So reality manifests to us as an experience. And all your life is basically just a lot of experiences back to back to back, right? So, for example, let's take a movie, a film. What's a movie? Let's say it's 2 hours long. Well, if you break a movie down, all it is a collection of what we would call frames. And it's literally just frame by frame, which is these little millisecond long clips that are strung together to create the movie. And your life kind of operates in the same way, where your reality in your life and this timeline of existence that you have is just a collection of frames. Like these tiny little thin, minuscule moments in time, like bolted on top of each other over and over again, create your life. And these are experiences. So, you're having an experience right now, and now you're having a new one, and a new one, and a new one. And how we understand the passage of time and reality is by creating experiences. And it's no different from having a movie that, is just loads, like millions and millions of little frames clipped together and, compiled in a linear order to tell a story. That's basically our life. So let's say, for example, you eat a burger. Well, you're having an experience when you eat that burger. Really, it's a lot of mini experiences put into one, which then, creates another experience. So every millisecond, you can imagine like it's like every millisecond that passes, your brain is taking like a screenshot of what you see, and it's doing it so quickly that this is kind of like you're experiencing life like a video, because that's all a video is. It's just a collection of loads of photos. And if you don't believe me, then you can go and like slow it down and it's just frame by frame. These things are clipped together. And so eating a burger would be a tangible experience. You're experiencing tangible, objective reality when you eat the burger. And let's say that you go to a music festival. Well, that's a tangible experience. You're listening to music, you're dancing, you're drinking, whatever. But let's say you experience a dream. Well, the dream is intangible. So let's say that you go to bed tonight and you have a dream that you climb Mount Everest, right? Well, that didn't happen. It's still real to you. Obviously, you know that it's not real. The interesting thing about a dream is even though it's not real, it's part of reality because it happened. even though it didn't happen in a true sense, it still happened like in this abstract sense of your imagination. And the dream that you've had can still go on to influence your life and your perspective and your belief systems. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to get into this, and it's going to all make sense. And the experience of democracy. So, if you live in Western society or like, a typical Western country, then you probably experience democracy through your political system. And this is something you experience. You experience it because people, get in power and they've been voted in and such. And this is intangible. It's not something that you can point to or see or touch. It's not, democracy is not the voting station. It's not the polls. It's not the politicians. It's this universal, social agreement that we've all decided is what is best for us in society. It's very much real, but you can't touch it and you can't see it. All you can touch and see are physical representations of it that deduce your understanding. And this, my friends, is called consciousness. This is consciousness, right? All consciousness is a string of experiences. It's taking what happens every millisecond or every millisecond of every millisecond of every millisecond, and it's your brain's just taking constant screenshots and stringing them together in a very, very, very high definition, high FPS, high frame rate video, and that's what you experience. Fortunately, we can use our consciousness to manipulate reality and trick it into changing what we want. And the reason I'm starting with this understanding and this sort of idea is because this really puts you in control. People think that reality just happens. And people think that their life and the way that they live and their reality is just this thing that's just been forced upon them by the universe, and they're not in control, and that's just, it is what it is. Everything happens for a reason. That's just life. Not true. In the same way that the director of a movie or the writer of the writer of a book can determine the direction and trajectory of the plot, you can do the exact same thing using your consciousness. But you cannot do that unless you comprehend your ability to perceive in the first place. Because imagine the writer trying to change the direction of the novel if the writer didn't believe that they were in control of the novel. Imagine the writer just thought, I'm just going to close my eyes and scribble, and whatever comes out is just, I'm not in control of this plot, it's just coming out of me. That's what people think about their life. They don't think they're in control, they don't think they have any ability to manipulate it or change it, they think it just happens. And this is the first problem of the mindset training here that I'm trying to address, is you can be in control, but the only way that you gain control is if you think you are in control. And if you think you're not, then you're not going to try. Now, it gets a layer deeper than this, and we're going to continuously build on this information. And you might need to rewatch this video a couple of times for all of this stuff to make sense, especially the representation stuff up here. But as I go through this will make sense. So it gets a little bit deeper, because what we can do is we can map reality across time. Because there are 6 dimensions of reality, okay? And this is really, this idea here, this took me, and I'm not even joking, 3 weeks of staring at a whiteboard to get and understand. But now I get it, it makes sense, I'm going to share it with you. So, we know that reality exists across 3 dimensions of time. Because we have the past, okay, the past reality. So this is what reality was, okay? So imagine like a screenshot of what happened, all of the experiences that you've had and that have built up are your past reality, okay? In the same way that if you're creating a movie or writing a book, let's say that you're writing a book and you're writing and you're now writing page 150. Well, page 1 to 149, that's the past. That's what you have done, okay? That's what reality was. And then we have present reality, which is what reality is, and that is what you're doing in the immediate moment, here and now, right now. So what I was just talking about, all of this stuff that we got up to here a minute ago, that is now past reality for you. That is footage that's been locked away in your memory and can be reaccessed if you wish to find it, right? Not all memories can be reaccessed because they fade with time, but if I asked you to pause the video and just think about what you had for breakfast this morning, you could go into your imagination and recall that and then create an imaginary experience, and you could perceive the past. It is possible to perceive and observe the past. And if you don't believe me, pause the video, close your eyes, and tell me what you had for dinner yesterday. Close your eyes, okay, you're using your imagination and you're creating like an image in your head, or you're creating a narrative or some words in your head, and bang, now I know what you have for dinner yesterday. You just successfully perceived the past. And you can't perceive something if it doesn't exist, which is why reality can exist as a past dimension, okay? Then we have present reality, that's what reality is. And then we have future reality, and that's what reality will be. And this is where things for me when I was making this video got confusing, because I was like, how can reality exist in the future? But it does, right? And I'm going to explain this. So we have what reality was, what it is, and what it will be, or what it could be. Because here's where things get interesting, is if I ask you, what are you going to have for breakfast tomorrow? You can tell me, because you can set an intent, and then you can make that happen, which means that you have just successfully perceived the future and acted it out. So you, if I said to you, what are you going to name your firstborn child if it's a son? And you say, oh, I know, I'm going to call it Charlie, after Charlie Morgan, because he's a total legend, right? Let's say that I'm joking, but let's say that you did that. Now, if you have a son, you're going to name it, and you name it Charlie, you perceived the future before it happened. And this is the most unique and beautiful thing that we have going for us as human beings, is our ability to perceive the future and act it out. And this is why we are truly in control. Because this is why people get confused and why people fail, is because they think they're not in control of the future. They think the future is just this weird grey area of stuff that just unfolds and that they are completely at the mercy of. That's not true. Because if that was the case, then you'd have a panic attack every time you went to do your breakfast. You'd have a panic attack every time you decided what to wear in the morning. Or you'd have a panic attack every time you had to think about what question you were going to ask someone on a first date. Let's say you're like, I've got to, because imagine not being able to perceive the future. Like, you do this every day because, you probably have like a calendar or a schedule, And then, like, let's say you set an alarm. Like, I'm setting an alarm. The future reality is that I will wake up at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So you set the alarm and you wake up at 7 a.m. You predicted the future. It's within your control. Now, don't get me wrong. There's lots of stuff in the future that is out of your control, like which politician gets into power, or what world war breaks out, or, you know, whether your mum falls down the stairs or something. Probably not a very nice image for you, but there's things that you can't control, but you can perceive and control. The little corner of reality that is within your control in your life can be controlled. Now, reality can only be observed in the present. And this sounds a little contradictory, right? Because I've just told you that you can perceive reality in the future and the past. You can go back to your imagination, and you can go forward in your imagination, and you can imagine what you're going to do and what you have done. And those two things are very real. They are very much real because, you know, you can comprehend them. But the issue is that in order for you to visit the past or visit the future, you have to go through the present. Because let me give you a thought experiment for a second here. When do you set your alarm? When do you decide what you're going to eat for breakfast? When do you think about what you did yesterday? Or when do you think about a memory? You do it now. So in order for you to recall from memory something, or in order for you to project an idea into the future, you do it in the here and now, which means that the gateway to perceiving the past or the future is in the present, which is why all of the power that you have in your life and all of the ability to control and manipulate reality is given to you. The gift is given to you in the present. You can only think about the past or perceive the future in the present moment. Because, you know, you're not in the future when you're perceiving it, and you're not in the past when you're perceiving it. Because as human beings, we only have the ability to act and decide and think in the here and now, but we can use the here and now to visit the past or the future. Okay? Now, as a human, your ability to observe reality is, as we know, fundamentally constrained to your five senses and your imagination and the present moment. And let me just retouch on this constraint here, because this is something that's really important. This is something that changed my life. When I was 17, I didn't really know that you could be successful. Like my father was had like a successful career in finance, but not like entrepreneurially, like, you know, millions and millions of dollars and billions of dollars and stuff. Like I didn't know that you could be successful. I thought at 17 or 18 years old that the only way that you got rich was by being a celebrity or by being like a sports person, and I wasn't going to be able to do either. So to me, my reality, my financial reality, was constrained because I didn't even know that entrepreneurship existed. I didn't even know that business was a thing. Like, of course, I knew that people ran like restaurants and, you know, people ran like bars, and, you know, I knew that people had businesses. But one day I watched an ad on Facebook, and it was some guy giving like a house tour of his mansion in the Beverly Hills, and he was talking about being an entrepreneur. And the word entrepreneur had never, ever entered my five senses before, and I'd never imagined it. And so I found this word, this idea, entrepreneur, which is actually like this intangible abstraction, right? Entrepreneur's not a real thing. You can't touch or see entrepreneur. You can see representations of it in human form. Like you might look at me and poke me and be like entrepreneur, but I'm a human being. You're just touching my flesh and my skin. You know, I'm not the abstraction of entrepreneur. I'm just a human that is an entrepreneur, right? So I had to Google the term, and I had to Google entrepreneur and find out what it was and learn about it. And the second that I received that information, my life changed forever. It's kind of like, you know, it's like living in the jungle and, you know, being like everyone dying really early, and then it's like discovering antibiotics in the jungle. It's like until you discover it, you can't use it and you can't act it out. But anyway, you know, this is why like I'm making this training, and I want to make it clear to you that a lot of the reason that you're suffering right now is because there are things that exist that would help you that you don't yet perceive. You are yet to, like, you might think that what you perceive and what you experience is everything that you ever could, but it's not. There are things out there, there are pieces of information locked away that you can find that will completely alter the course of your life. Completely. And this is the critical information argument that I was making in week 1. And the present moment, here and now, as I'm speaking, as you're listening, as you're having this experience, is the gateway to the observation of the past and the future. Understand, you cannot experience past reality, and you cannot experience future reality unless you're in the present moment. If you want to imagine or observe the past or future, you can only do it in the present moment. And if you wish to observe past reality or future reality, you've got to do it through the gateway of the present. You can't observe without being in the present. And this is kind of what it looks like, right? So, you know, we really are constrained by our immediate sensory awareness and our immediate imaginary awareness. And like, you can't go, I know this is like, I'm repeating myself here, but you can't visit the past or the future without, you know, and I know that I'm not saying that you have like the ability to be like a time machine. Obviously you can't go to the future in the sense that, you know, you can't physically take yourself to a place that time has not yet elapsed. You know, you're not going to teleport your body to, you know, London 300 years from now and be able to look around and see everything. Like that's not the point. The point I'm making is that we have a very basic and very limited ability to control our behavior in the future. And that's the key, because all you need to do to change your reality is change your behavior. And it gets really exciting to me because, you know, you can literally change reality. Let me give you a fundamental example, right? Let's say that right now you don't like the color of the walls in your bedroom. And you're like, I don't really like these walls. I want them to be blue, not green. Why you'd have green walls in your bedroom is beyond me. Maybe like Shrek, I don't know. But you can decide, tomorrow, I will paint the walls blue. And you can wake up tomorrow, buy the paint the walls, and by the end of the day, the wall will be blue. You have just used your imagination in the present to change reality. And now the future has become the present, because now the present reality situation is that your walls are blue. And so my point here is that in the same way that you can repaint the bedroom walls that you have, You can change your behavior towards business, towards money, towards relationships, towards health, all of these things. Now, there's lots of stuff that gets in the way because, obviously it's harder to build a business, it's hard to get in shape than it is to just simply paint a wall, because it requires a lot more information, a lot more knowledge. But the basic premise and the point I'm making is that things are within your control. The only thing that you can control are your decisions, your actions, and your behavior. And fortunately enough for you, that is all you need to be successful and make a change. And if you don't believe me, well, I can tell you it works because I did it. I created, I used the present, I created a future reality that I wanted to achieve, and I visualized it, and I went and I did it. And I acted it out in the present, and eventually the future became the present. The thing that I wanted became what I have now, and now I can do it again. And the same thing applies to the past. I can go back in my memory, and I can create imaginary past experiences to relive and re-experience what has happened. So, for example, when I was, I think 21 or 22, I went to a Flume concert. So Flume is my favorite music artist, and he was playing in Camden Town in London at a venue called, I think it was called Coco venue or something. And I can go back in my memory and I can relive that experience. I'm doing it in the present moment, but I can very much, the past is very much real, and the future is very much real, but only in so far as you can imagine it, if that makes sense. And that's a pretty powerful idea, pretty damn heavy hitting. And as we continue through the rest of the week 2 training, this idea will become more and more important, and you'll have a further understanding, and you'll comprehend why I'm giving you this now. But for now, just need to know this idea. Now, because we have 2 forms of reality and 3 time frames, we can observe reality in 6 different dimensions. So there are 6 dimensions of reality. There are only 6, categories of reality, if that makes sense, that are as follows. So the first 3 dimensions fall into the tangible category. Remember, we've got here tangible, intangible, and tangible. So we've got 2 forms, and we've got 3 dimensions of time. So if we times 2 by 3, we get 6. And so when you make an observation, and when you observe and experience reality, you're experiencing one of 6 forms, and that is it. There are no other forms that you can possibly comprehend reality in. It's one of these 6 forms. The first is tangible past reality. So tangible means it is something that you can touch and see and feel. Past means it's happened, so it's in the past. And so this is what was physically. So, when I take myself back to the Flume concert, the music concert, and, I imagine the dancing, and I imagine the music and the atmosphere of the room and the people, obviously atmosphere is intangible, but you get the point. When I relive that experience, I'm experiencing tangible past reality in the same way that, if I tried to imagine the first time that I ever went jet skiing, it's a tangible experience. I can feel the wind in my hair and the speed and the water and the fun, very much tangible. Then we have the tangible present reality. So the tangible present reality is what is physically now. So the state of your environment is you can currently observe it. So if you turn around and you look at what's behind you, you're experiencing reality in the dimension that is tangible present. Okay? So I'm looking at my desk right now, I can see the water bottle, here's the water bottle, I can see the screen, I can see the video, I can hear my voice, I'm experiencing tangible present reality. And then we have tangible future reality, which is what could be physically. So this is the example I gave you earlier. If you close your eyes right now and you imagine your bedroom walls as a dark blue, now you've imagined what could be physically. You've imagined a potential future. Cool thing is you can close your eyes and imagine red walls, or brown walls, or black walls, or grey walls, or maybe brown walls with blue curtains, right? So, when you're imagining something that doesn't exist but could, you're imagining the future. And here's the cool thing is that thing doesn't have to unfold for it to actually be real. Because as long as you can imagine it, it's part of reality. It's not true. It doesn't exist. Like if you picture, blue bedroom walls, but you never paint them blue, then it never manifested, it was never true, but it's very much real. But understand, if you can comprehend it and perceive it, it is real. There's a big difference between what is true and what is real. Truth is what actually exists and what is actually there. Real is what you can comprehend, okay, and what you can think. So, if I imagine a planet far away that's made of marshmallows, it's not true because it doesn't exist, but I could very much convince myself it's real. So my point here is that when you're making observations, your observations are subjective, which means that things can be real to you, but not objectively be real. Because we're going to get into this in a second, but there's a very big difference between the subjective truth and the objective truth. Because I, in my reality, could genuinely convince myself that Venus is made of marshmallows. That I could like in my reality, I could truly believe that. Like I could actually think that's true. Obviously, I don't. But to me, that would be real. Because now, as far as I'm concerned, Venus is made of marshmallows. And you would challenge that and say, well, that's not true because Venus is made of gas and whatever the hell it's made of, right? Definitely not marshmallows. But some people, we all do this. We can become incredibly convinced of things that aren't real or true. Because objectively, Venus is just Venus. It's not made of marshmallows, and it's just Venus is just a rock that's surrounded by gas or something, right? But to me, it could be marshmallows. And that's the point I'm making here. Is like if you can comprehend it or see it, like you can believe it, and that can become your reality, which is very dangerous. Because then you might be like, oh, I'm going to go to Venus and I'm going to eat marshmallows, and then let's say that you had the ability to travel through space, you get to Venus and be like, well, there's no marshmallows here. Oh, I'm going to die because it's toxic, right? That's a really weird example, but you get my point, right? And we'll talk more. This is all going to make more sense. I think your picture's probably becoming a bit clearer now. And trust me, the more we go through this, the more it will make sense. So just bear with me, okay? Now, yeah, so this is basically where we observe a physical component of reality with one or more of our five senses, or by using our imagination to create an imaginary sensory experience that could be physically sensed. So, for example, in the tangible past or the tangible future, you're not using your five senses to make these observations, but you're using your imagination to create sensory experiences. So, if I ask you right now, can you please close your eyes and remember, what's an example I could give you here? Like, can you close your eyes for me and just remember Gangnam Style, the song Gangnam Style? Well, what you're going to start doing is you're going to start playing it in your head, even though there's no stimuli. You're not listening to the song. You can probably in your head start bobbing along and start singing it in your head and remembering the melody. And so what you're doing is you're experiencing. Well, technically you're experiencing present reality my point there is that you can create imaginary sensory experiences, right? And this is very much possible. If I ask you to imagine what could be physically, like, hey, I want you to imagine that your bedroom walls are red. It's like, well, you can close your eyes and then you can see the red paint and you can see your bedroom and, you can't see it because it's not real, but you can create the experience in your head as if it is real, and you can create the sensory experiences using your imagination. So anytime we observe the tangible, it's either going to be in the past, present, or future, and to do this, it's something that we physically sense, whether using our five senses or using our imagination. If you turn around now and you observe something, then you're using your five senses in the present. Now, some examples. So, what color your bedroom walls used to be is, you can close your eyes and imagine what color your room used to be, and then what color your bedroom is now, and then what color your bedroom could or will be in the future. So, these things are all very much part of reality, but across different dimensions, okay? And like I said, just because it doesn't happen doesn't mean that it's not part of reality, It's like, it's kind of like if you, let's say you were going to have a child, and, tragically your wife miscarried, which would be awful. Like, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Like, just because the baby wasn't born doesn't mean it wasn't real and didn't exist in your mind as a child, right? A lot of mothers, after they go through this, it's kind of like they've had the child, but it's still part of them and part of their reality, but it's just not there because obviously it passed away, which is terrible. But you get my point. And tangible past reality could be like, what did Drake music used to sound like? What does it sound like now, and what could it sound like in the future? So I could ask you, if you were a massive Drake fan, I could be like, hey, can you draw up a potential future Drake song for me and what you think his music could sound like in a year? And you could close your eyes and maybe think of what a Drake song could sound like. Now, it's unlikely that is actually what it's going to sound like, but my point is that you could comprehend it. And for a second, it could be real to you. Just because it doesn't manifest doesn't mean it's not real, at least not to you subjectively. It will become clearer as to what that means shortly here. Because really, what is true objectively is only the present and the past, because the future hasn't happened yet, so it's not, it's not real. But my point is that you can make something feel real by imagining it. And another example, pretty interesting trend recently, tangible past reality. What did Mark Zuckerberg used to look like? You can close your eyes and you probably have an image of what Mark Zuckerberg used to look like. You can close them and picture it, and therefore you can observe the past in tangible form. You can't, you could obviously go and look up a picture of him or something, but you can do it with your imagination as well. And tangible present reality, which is what Mark Zuckerberg looks like now. So you can literally just go and observe. You could probably go to, well, I wouldn't advise you do this. It probably wouldn't be worth your time, but you could go to Facebook's offices and sit down with the Zuck and see what he looked like and be like, oh, that's what Mark Zuckerberg looks like, right? But then tangible future reality, what you could do in your imagination is you could imagine what Mark Zuckerberg would look like in the future. So, let's say that you were like, tomorrow I'm going to punch Mark Zuckerberg, which I would not advise that you do because you'd probably get in a lot of trouble. But let's say that you were going to do that. Then what you could do in your mind is you could imagine Mark Zuckerberg with a black eye and say, that's what he's going to look like after I've punched him. And then you could, in theory, go and punch him and give him a black eye, which means that you observe the future and then it came true because of your behavior, right? So, it can be real in your mind before it's real in reality. And the only way that happens is if you can discern the cause and effect relationships between what you have to do to make something happen. So, if you think about the future with me for a second here, think about your goal and what you want, which could be let's say you want to make $10K a month, $10,000 a month, right? Well, what I can tell you is $10,000 a month is something that you can perceive in the future. It's not necessarily, well, you could perceive it as tangible, I suppose, because you you could see in your bank account, right? But $10,000 a month is like, there are things that you can do, there are behaviors that you can take that will actually make that happen and force that to manifest. And if that wasn't true, then no one would be able to do it. But a lot of people have done it and do it and can do it. And therefore, like in the same way that if you wanted to give Mark Zuckerberg a black eye, all you'd have to do is punch him. If you want to make 10K a month, all you've got to do is the things that help you make 10K a month. And it really is that simple. If you can perceive it and it's within the laws of nature and, God or the universe gives you the gift of life and enough time to accomplish it, then you can do it. Which is, people just don't get this. Like, anything that you comprehend that is within the laws of physics and nature, you can be done. The only variable is time, and how much time it takes you to do it. Because if you want to make 10K a month and, you die in the next 3 months, then you're not going to make it. So as long as you've got the time and the goal is, within, like, is realistic and can actually be achieved, then you can do it. And it's like, what you probably can't do is, is send a man, to the edge of the universe in a wetsuit with no spaceship. Because the laws of thermodynamics and gravity and pressure, like, they don't allow you to do that. Like, there are rules and laws that we have to play by. So there are things that you can think of and you could conjure up in your imagination that just will never happen. It can still be like kind of real, you can still kind of think of them and they can still be a component of reality in that sense. But in terms of like what actually objectively, truly, properly can manifest, it's just as long as it's within the laws of nature and physics and you have enough time, anything can be done. It's like Elon Musk wanted to put a man on Mars. Like, it's possible. Like, the engineering and stuff is likely to be there. So, all we need is enough time to just figure it out and get it done. And the real constraint is just time, right? And this is kind of the cool thing about being human is we can, like, you can do anything you want as long as it's, you have the time and it's within the laws of nature. Like, let's say, for example, that you're 70 years old and, you want, let's say that you want to build $1 billion software company. Well, okay, a better example. Let's say that you're 70 years old and you only have 2 months left to live. Now, God help you, right? Well, if your goal is to, become a billionaire and right now you have $0, then that's not going to happen because it takes a lot of time to become a billionaire. Trust me, I'm trying. It takes a lot of time, right? And so, you can't need to be realistic with your goals, but if you just want to become financially free and make some money, like that is a tangible future reality, my friend, that really can happen. And all you've got to do is pay attention. So anyway, move on. So remember, the gateway to observe the tangible past or future is the present. So if you wanted to experience what color your bedroom walls used to be, you would use your memory, or you'd look at a picture, and you do that in the present. And if you wanted to experience what the color of your walls could look like in the future, then you'd use your imagination. Once again, you do this through the present. Same thing with the Drake music. If you wanted to experience what Drake music used to sound like, or could sound like, then you would use your imagination and you'd be doing it in the present. Because you can't exist in the future and you can't exist in the past. You really, like, trust me, you can. Like, you know, when you're on your phone and you're looking through your camera roll and you're looking through past photos or videos, like, it might feel like you're experiencing the past, which you kind of are, but you're very much in the present because you're seeing those photos in the here and now. And the same thing is true for the, when you're making assumptions or judgments about the future. And if you wanted to experience what Zuck used to look like, then you could visit old photos on the internet or use your memory, both of which you'd be doing in the present. And if you wanted to experience what he could look like in the future, then you'd use your imagination once again in the present. So the key here is to understand that the whole thing is in the present. Everything happens in the present moment, and you know, it's no different from watching a movie and all these, like, your life is just all these little frames, these little screenshots strung together. And all the screenshots that have happened exist in the past, and you can go and see those screenshots by looking at photos or history or your memory. And all the screenshots that are going to happen, you know, you can't perfectly perceive them and comprehend them and predict the future. That's impossible. But the corner of your reality that you can control is your behavior and your actions, and you can very much control those things. And so, you know, tomorrow you can say, tomorrow morning I'm going to do 10 press-ups, and then you can go and do 10 press-ups. Well, you can't control the future, and you can't possibly, you know, comprehend what's going to happen on a macro scale, but you can decide to make your bed and actually do it. And that's kind of the point. Now, the other three dimensions that we discuss are in the intangible category. So whilst we can perceive reality in the tangible form, we can also do it in the intangible form. So we have the intangible past, the intangible present, and the intangible future. So this is what was, so the past, but in abstract form. So once again, remember, the intangible reality are the things that we cannot perceive. So, for example, let's take like democracy. So, you know, we have the intangible past reality, which is what democracy was. So we could go and read about ancient Greece and learn about their democratic system and how that worked and how women weren't allowed to vote and it was, you know, elected and stuff. But then we have the intangible present reality, which is what democracy is now. And then we have intangible future reality, which is what democracy could be in the future. And, you know, you can project your imagination out into the future to imagine how democracy might change. And whilst that might not manifest and actually happen, it's still real because you've imagined it. It's not true. It's not true until it's actually happened, but it's still very much real and part of reality. And this is where we observe an intangible abstract component of reality with our imagination. So remember, abstract means it can't be touched or sensed, it can only be imagined. So some examples for you. So intangible past reality, intangible present reality, and intangible future reality. So we have what the political state of the USA used to be. Very much a real thing, part of reality, can't be touched or seen because the political state isn't, if you go right now and poke Donald Trump, you're not touching the political state of the USA. You're touching the present of the USA, you're touching a representation of the political state, not the political state itself. It's not something you can touch, right? And then we have the present, which is what it is now, what it could be. Same thing with your mother. So, you know, the relationship you used to have with your mother, the relationship you have now with your mother, or you could have. Another example is your ex. So how angry you used to be at your ex is intangible past reality because you can, this is very much real, it happened, right? So you can go and imagine how angry you used to be at him or her, but, you know, it's not something you can touch or sense, it's just a feeling, right? But then we have how angry you are now and how angry you will be in the future, right? So, you know, we can observe these things across the three dimensions of time, which is pretty cool. Same thing again, the gateway to the past or the future is the present. So if you wanted to experience what the political state of the USA used to be, you could read history or use your memory. And if you wanted to experience what it would be or could be, then you'd use your imagination. The same thing is true for your relationship with your mum or how angry you'd be at your ex. Anytime you want to visit the past or the future, we go through the present. So to summarize, here are the 6 dimensions of reality. Most of them you observe with your imagination. But the big one is the tangible present reality, which you observe with your five senses. Okay? And here's it gets a bit confusing because, tangible past reality, let's say you're imagining, the burger that you ate for your birthday when you were 18, best burger of your life, you swear, you can re-experience that as a imaginary sensory experience. So you use your imagination to create a sensory experience. It's very much real to you. It's there. You can see it. It's just not happening right now. Okay? Now, the next thing is understanding. I've alluded to this a little bit, but I'm going to explain it. Subjective reality. So here's the thing. There exists a pure state of truth, and this is objective reality. Remember, objective reality, and I should really change this here. Actually, yeah. Where did I put it? Here we go. So objective reality is reality unobserved by a human. This is the state of things as they actually exist. Nothing has meaning here. Things just are as they are. Nothing is anything. Nothing is anything. So, in objective reality, $1 million is nothing except $1 million. It's not a lot of money, not little. In objective reality, a rock isn't sharp or blunt, it's just a rock. Okay? It exists as a rock. And even then, it wouldn't be called a rock because there'd be nothing to name it. I can't explain this without names, it's physically impossible. But, imagine a rock with no human. It wouldn't even be a rock, it wouldn't be called anything. It would just be a collection of atoms. It wouldn't be grey, it wouldn't be small, it wouldn't be by a beach, it wouldn't mean anything. It wouldn't have any meaning at all. It would just be basically a collection of atoms aggregated into a structure. And we came along and we gave it a name, and we gave it meaning, and we gave it relationship to other things. Same thing with an explosion. If an explosion happens, it's not bright or dim, it's not loud or quiet, it's not even called bloody explosion, for God's sake. It's just a chemical or physical, reaction abiding by the laws of physics, projecting out into the universe. It's not real, it's not anything. It's just happening. It's nothing, right? So the cool thing is that we have subjective reality. And so this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is where we can start getting a little bit more practical, and this is where things can make a lot of sense. So when you observe objective reality, so when you go up to the structures and the phenomenon and the things that happen and you see them, you create an experience. So you walk up to this aggregate of atoms that is basically a rock, but you don't know is a rock yet, and you point at that aggregate of atoms and you say, that's a rock. And then you touch the rock and you say, that rock is sharp. And then you look at the rock and you say, that rock is grey, right? You give objective reality meaning by experiencing it. So when you observe objective reality, you create an experience. Okay? It is impossible to make an observation in the past, present, or future, whether intangible or tangible, without creating an experience. Every single millisecond of every single day, for as long as you are conscious and not asleep and not dreaming, you are creating an experience. You're added frame by frame by frame, like the movie. It's the same thing with, what is a book? A book is just a collection of linear words put together, that makes sense. It's the same thing with your life. It's just moment after moment after moment, millisecond by millisecond by millisecond, strung together, and all of those milliseconds are individual experiences, right? Here's the cool thing. All experiences are subjective experiences, okay? Now, the term subjective means human, right? And let me explain. A subjective experience is when a component of objective reality, and it's put here, is when a component of objective reality is subjected to your biases, beliefs, and perspectives manifested into your mind. So this is awesome because what happens is the world exists as it is, with completely, it just exists. Doesn't mean anything. Nothing happens, right? It just is, When you observe it, you create a subjective reality, which is you mirror reality in your mind, and you start giving it meaning and stuff. And the sum of all of your subjective experiences is known as your subjective reality. And this is really, really important to understand with this mindset training. There are two forms of reality: objective reality and subjective reality. Objective reality exists first, and once a human observes it and creates an experience, subjective reality is created. So the objective is the prerequisite for the subjective. Your reality is not objective. You do not see the world for what it is, you see it for who you are, okay? So as you're going through life, and as you're going through, as you're creating these experiences, you have created a reality, right? What is basically what you experience and how the world manifests to you. It's important you understand that this experience of reality, this thing that is called reality that you know, everything about you, everything that happens, everything that has happened, everything that will happen, everything that you perceive and see and imagine and think, your entire reality, basically, the collection of all your experiences is yours. It's unique to you. No one else has it the same way. No one. There might be people with similar realities to you that, share similar perspectives in certain ways. Like maybe you're a chef and maybe someone else is a chef, so you have the chef reality, but no one has an identical reality. It's like snowflakes. No two are made the same, right? I think that's true. It might not be true, but from the snowflake perspective, maybe it's not true. But the reality thing, very much so, right? And this is cool because you created it. You might not think that you created it. You might not believe and understand that you created it, but the reality that you experienced, you created. Because how else could it bloody exist? All that happened is you were born and you spawned in and became conscious and you started walking through the world and, imagining through the world and sensing your way through the world blindly. And what started happening is you started making observations and having experiences that have just strung together, and now you have a reality. When you were born, you were a blank slate, but you've made all these observations and you've made all these experiences, and now you believe the world is a certain way. And the interesting thing is there's people out there that believe the world is a completely different way to you because they've had different experiences. The objective, the sort of the nexus of your reality stays the same. So there is a true, objective, pure form of truth that exists. The state of things as they actually exist. That is objective reality. No human can judge them. They just are. So I've given plenty of examples, right? But when you observe that objective reality, when you look at it or you look at a component of it, you experience that in your own way. And so let me give you an example. So let's take the new Ferrari 4x4. So there's a new car out at the moment. Sorry if you can hear my chair squeaking around, by the way. I need to oil it. Anyway, there's a new car out, Ferrari 4x4, right? I can't remember its name, but it's like an SUV. Now, that Ferrari 4x4 is a component of reality. So let's say that you're walking with 3 of your friends and, you see the Ferrari 4x4. So you have a tangible, present experience, which means you're experiencing reality in tangible form in the here and now. You might look at the Ferrari 4x4 and think, that's the ugliest car I've ever seen in my life. Your friend might look at the Ferrari 4x4 and think, I don't really care. I don't care about that car. And your other friend might look at that car and think, that's the worst. That's the best thing I've ever seen in my life. So 3 people have just experienced objective. The car exists. It isn't anything. It's just a thing, right? But 3 people have come along and created 3 different subjective experiences about this car. And this is what makes us humans so interesting as a species, is no one's the same. We might look the same, and hell, even identical twins can be born with genetic identity and be identical, but the reality is always different. And so we basically hallucinate reality in our own mind, and we create subjective experiences, and we see the world in a completely different way to everybody else. And so here's how it works. Objective reality exists. The state of things as they exist in their pure form, nothing is anything, nothing can be judged. The rock is just a rock. It's not a rock, it's just a collection of atoms. And what happens is a human observes the thing. So a human observes objective reality, and what then happens is subjective reality is created in the human's mind. Okay? So this is how we perceive reality. The thing exists, we observe it, and through our observation, we create an idea in our head as to what reality is. And what we're going to do in later videos is explore what is right and what is wrong. And I've got some stuff for you. We're going to talk about this in lengths of detail. But for now, you just need to understand the basic thing. Now, here's a weird thing. As I'm sure you've noticed, we all have different subjective realities, right? So like I said, there's going to be people that agree with you. There's going to be people that disagree with you. There's going to be people that see the world in a similar way to you, and people who see the world in a different way to you. But no one's going to agree with you on everything. And, no one's going to have exactly the same reality as you ever. But the question is why? Why is it the case that, we all experience the world in a different way? Because again, you might think that this is just some phenomenon that's just designed by God or natural selection to keep the species going or something. But there is a reason, and it took me about a week to figure out, and here we go. It's called paradigm. So you might have not heard of this term before, but it's the most important thing that you've got. And if you haven't heard of the term paradigm, and if you can't define it at first principle and explain it properly then this is an example of what I was giving you earlier. You know how I told you that you are sort of constrained to the information that you've been given, to your 5 senses and imaginary experience? If you don't know how paradigms work properly, and you can't confidently explain exactly how it works and what it means and what it is and how it affects you, then this is an example of a piece of information that's been locked away that you haven't yet perceived. It's a part of reality that you haven't discovered. So what I'm going to do basically here, knowledge is like a weapon. I'm going to give you a tool. This is a tool, right? In the same way that, if you live in the jungle in the middle of the Congo in Africa in your tribe, and if you don't know money exists, and how you're probably not going to bother about even making money, so it doesn't exist, right? And the same thing is true with paradigms. If you're trying to become successful and get rich and do that as fast as possible with as little pain as possible, then the easiest way to do it is to change your paradigm. But a lot of people don't even know what the word means. So, example, right? So, to observe objective reality, you use a paradigm. So, in order to observe something and create a subjective reality, we have to first observe objective reality, right? And basically, your paradigm is the thing that you use to observe. So, think about it like this. Let's say you saw a bird outside and you wanted to take a picture of the bird, right? And you'd go and pick up your camera or your phone and you'd snap a picture, right? Or, let's say that you you wanted to see a bacteria on like a piece of fruit, and you can't see the bacteria, so you use a microscope, you use a lens, right? And you zoom in. Your paradigm's kind of the same. Your paradigm is to the camera and the microscope, like the camera and the microscope is to the bird and the bacteria what your paradigm is to objective reality. And what that means is that your paradigm is the lens through which you see the world. So imagine being a blind man and only being able to see if you put glasses on. Your paradigm is basically your glasses, right? It is the lens through which you see things. And it's impossible to observe objective reality and create an experience and create a subjective reality without a paradigm. It's impossible. It cannot be done. Like, we're not human beings. We're not overpowered in that sense. We're not OP. We have to use a paradigm to see. In the same way that a blind man would have to use glasses to see, or you would have to use a camera to take a picture of a bird. Like, got to be done. So your paradigm is the lens through which you see the world. And basically, you might be thinking, well, okay, what the hell is this thing? Well, your paradigm is basically the collection of all the beliefs that you hold as true or false. Now, this is a thing. The next video that we're going to talk about, the next video we're going to go through is going to build on the idea of beliefs and how beliefs form and how beliefs are structured. For now, you just need to understand the basic premise of this, and we'll get into it later on in another video. So, what is a belief and how do they form? Because your paradigm is basically just all your beliefs put together, and a belief is basically an articulated statement of perceived truth. So all a belief is what you think is true. Okay. So there's other words for belief that you might use. So your assumptions, your judgments, your convictions, your principles, your ideas, your ideologies, your views, your understandings, your theories, your knowledge, your faiths, your axioms, your models, your hypotheses, your guesses, your stances, your positions. Any of these words denote belief. And all a belief is a statement of perceived truth. So if I say to you, I am a man, that is a belief. If I say to you, I love my mother, that is a belief. If I say to you, outside I can see a table and chairs, that is a belief. Any time that you make a statement about anything, you're stating a belief. So if my sister is annoyed at me and I say to my friend, I think my sister's annoyed at me, that's a belief. Okay? So beliefs are basically how we sort of map reality. So when we make an observation, okay, and we build a subjective experience, all we're doing is creating beliefs. So, right now, you might not necessarily think it, but let's say, look, turn around, right, and look at the wall, right? You're experiencing the wall, but in order for you to experience the wall, you have to believe it's true. It's impossible for you to experience something without at least the idea that it's true, because, if you didn't believe it's true, you wouldn't see it, right? But we're going to keep it simple and basically just say that a belief is an articulated statement of perceived truth. So anytime that you make a statement about something of which you believe to be true, it's a belief. So if I say to you, for example, in my office, the curtains are grey, that's a belief. I've observed reality, I've created an experience in my head, and I'm articulating what I see. And I'm speaking what I believe to be the truth. Okay? Now, the thing about this is humans can lie. So I could tell you right now that my curtains are black. And, they're not. They're grey. Although I could genuinely be convinced they're black, but I might just be wrong. So there's nuances to this, but that's that. Now, your paradigm is broken into two parts. So your paradigm is the lens through which you see the world, and all your paradigm is the collection of all the beliefs you have. So, when you're looking through this thing and you're perceiving reality through this thing, you see reality through your belief systems. And the word paradigm is just a word used to aggregate and collect all of your beliefs together into one tidy term. In the same way that, we would collect the word reality. The reality is the collection of everything in the observable universe, or everything that we see, right? Same thing. together. Now, your paradigm is broken down into two parts. This gets kind of interesting. You have your worldview and your identity. So when it comes to your beliefs, we have really two different forms of which a belief can take. A belief can be about your worldview or identity, and I'll explain this and it will make sense. So when you observe objective reality, and this needs to be a different color, when you observe objective reality, you observe it through the lens of your paradigm, which is your worldview and your identity. Now, your worldview is the way that you see the world, your perspective on the world, and your identity is the way that you see yourself in relation to the world. This will become clear in a second. Now, here's the thing, is your paradigm, I should say paradigm here. I'll make this green for you. Your paradigm is broken into three types of belief. So, summary, and we'll move on. You see the world through your paradigm. Your paradigm is the collection of all of your beliefs. Your paradigm is broken down into two different categories, worldview and identity, and there are three types of belief that come under these two things. So let me explain. So first of all, the worldview-based beliefs. So your worldview is basically the way you see the world, and it is comprised of two different types of belief system, okay? And there's actually a nice easy diagram to explain this in a second, so don't worry. But the first form of belief that we have as human beings, that we can form, is a knowledge belief, or a knowledge-based belief. So a knowledge-based belief is what you believe exists or is true, and the objective binary details of it. So basically, this is just you knowing what's there, knowing what exists, and the objective nature of it before you give it any judgment. So if I look outside my office right now, I can see a chair. So if I say, there is a chair, then what I am doing is that is a knowledge-based belief. I'm stating what I have observed. And then this is basically how we connect with objective reality, okay? I'm not saying that the chair is big or small. I'm not saying the chair is comfortable or uncomfortable. I'm not saying whether the chair is far away or whether it's close. I'm just saying that I see it. Because the next stage of belief is judgment. So we have judgment-based beliefs. And this is what you believe about what you believe exists or is true. So this is huge. So this is basically created once you form an opinion or judgment of something that you've observed. Typically, you will use an adjective, a describing word to make one of these beliefs.